All right, welcome to the actual getting started with Unreal Engine 5, Unreal Engine 5.6, etc. You're probably looking at some sort of beginner level. We're going to talk about how to navigate the basics of this UI, and then we'll cover each of the panels. So the first things first is if you've never opened up Unreal before, you may actually be looking at the default loadout, which looks more like this. It is an empty level with not a lot of panels. You have the big viewport, you have your outliner, which is all your stuff, which is then your details panel, which has all of the details of your stuff from the outliner, etc. I do recommend most people, regardless of your monitor size, I'm on a 2.5K monitor, I do recommend working with the UE4 Classic layout. So to do that, we're going to go to Window, Loadout, UE4 Classic Layout. Once you swap that, it'll look something like this, and down here you'll see your content browser, and your content browser is going to be all of your content that you have for your projects. It might be objects like trees or grass or rocks, and then also materials and all that. If that's going over your head, don't worry, we're going to cover that in a little bit. But your content browser is easily accessible, and then you also have your place actors panel over here, and the place actors panel will allow you to add objects to your scene. Now I'm going to go ahead and clear out a couple things to make it look probably closer to what you were looking at. So I just got rid of some filters. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And you're probably just looking at an empty viewport. I've not moved anything yet, so now we're going to talk about camera animation, how to navigate around this UI just a little bit. So the first things first is when you hold right click on your mouse, and if you've played a video game before, you hold right click and you can look around. Hey, look, there's this beautiful sky. And then with the gamer claw, we use W to move forward, S to move back, A to strafe left or pan left, D to pan or strafe right, and then we can hold right click and move around and kind of just fly around like a video game. Now, I'm a big nerd. I play World of Warcraft, so the navigation very much feels like a flying mount in World of Warcraft. So first off, what I want you to do is just kind of get comfortable with moving up and down, side to side, left and right. If you hit the Q key, you will go down. If you hit the E key, you will go up while holding right click. If I release the right click and then hit WASD, nothing will happen. So that's important to know. And then if you just fly and keep flying, we can see that we're moving at a constant speed. If you take your mouse wheel and while holding right click and holding W and you mouse wheel forwards, you'll go faster. If you mouse wheel backwards, you'll actually bring your camera to a slower speed. So I can move forward, move backwards, etc. I'm going to pause 1 second and actually turn on my screencast key so you can see what I'm doing. So if you look over here, you're going to see all of my keyboard strokes as I go through this course, and we're just kind of flying around. Now, if you don't want to use the mouse wheel, but I do highly recommend getting a little comfortable with the keyboard shortcuts, you're going to use this slider right here. So right next to the perspective menu, you have your camera speed, and you can manually drag this up and start flying really fast, or you can bring this down, or you can go ahead and bring this value down and then bring that forward. And then we can go ahead and mouse wheel forward and backwards and have a really cool sort of flying around our scene. So that's to navigate around our scene. If you go ahead and add any object to your scene, you'll be able to start moving it around. So we're going to add an object like a cube. To do that, we'll go to, let's say, the geometry tab and find this box and then click and drag it in right here. And now we have that cube. And then if you hit the F key on the keyboard, you'll be able to center up your camera or your view to that object. So I'll just do that again, hold right click and then release right click, hit F, and now we're looking at our cube here. What you'll also see is that we have this little gizmo in the center of our object, and if we move this around, we can see that we're kind of moving this cube around and up and down and all that. We can also hit the E key on the keyboard and rotate this. We'll cover how to navigate some of this stuff a little bit more in the next video, but I'm just giving you some basic understanding of the navigation and the place actors panel. Now, if you don't see the place actors panel here, let's say it looks more like this and you don't have this over here, you have this menu called the quickly add to project menu. You can go ahead and from here go down to, let's say, shapes and add a cube. And hey, look, now we have our cube. And I don't know what the difference between this cube, which is actually being a little funky and weird, and only moving without the cube. And then you have this actual cube. So that's a thing to be aware of. But we have this cube moving around, and then E, we can rotate, and then R, we can go ahead and scale stuff like so. And if you don't want to use this menu, and I actually don't like using this menu, I am going to go ahead and under the cube plus sign menu here, scroll to the place actors panel and just dock this right over here, and now we have that place actors panel like we had just a second ago. I'm going to hit Control Z and reset the values of that cube that we have in the scene. I'll select the other one because I don't like this cube and hit the delete key to delete it. And then we can see here that with this object selected, we have our outliner over here. Our outliner is basically a summary of all of the objects in our level, in our project. So first off, we should identify what we're working in. We're working in something called a level in Unreal, and a level is basically a summary of a collection of assets, kind of like a video game level, but it houses everything. So the outliner summarizes everything that's in the level, and the level is identified down here. We're actually in this tab, which is the main level, and we can see here that it's currently not saved by this little asterisk right there. So I'll hit Control-Shift-S to save it, and now the level is saved. Every single time you move an object in your level, it will not commit those changes to the level until you save it. So that's worth just addressing right here. So this level, the cube doesn't officially live here until we save it. So go ahead and save it. And the outliner is just summarizing everything in that level. It's not just going to be objects like this floor or this cube. It will also be able to house things like lights. So we have this directional light right here, which is basically a sunlight. And we can see that there's kind of like a sun spot right there. And if we hit the E key and then we kind of bring this down, we can see that we're getting this cool like overcast kind of vibe with the default opening of the Unreal project. If you start a new fresh level, you may not have all of these objects in your scene, or you will not have all of these objects in the scene, but this is probably what you're looking at when you first get started with an Unreal Engine project. So we have our sunlight that we can rotate, and that's in the outliner of our level. And then with our other objects inside our outliner, we have the ability to see things that you might use in a video game, such as this player start. So if you were to actually make a video game, your player start would be right there, but we're not going to worry about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. By default, when you open up an Unreal Engine template, it will probably start with a floor object that looks kind of like this, and it's just a big open floor. So you could, I don't know, start playing a game if you wanted to make a game. Now, below your outliner, you have your details panel. And the details panel is going to have the details of any object that's in your outliner. So we have this cube right here, and right here, the cube is kind of just sitting, not quite at world center. It's actually world center is right over here, but we can see that the location of this object is 1410 by 90 by 310, and it has 0 rotation and a scale of 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the little back arrow right there, and that'll center it back up in the world, and I'll hit the F key to center it up in my camera view, and then I'll hit the W key to bring this up just a little bit, and now the cube is kind of just chilling out a little bit more center of the world. I'll put it right there so it looks like it's sitting on the floor, and then we can go ahead and select the directional light. We can see that the directional light is actually up there for some reason, so it's at 400. I'll just set this to 0 so it's right there. And if we hit the E key to rotate, we can go ahead and rotate this object. And we can see here that the rotation of this directional light is adjusting as we rotate it inside our viewport here. Now, we could also go ahead and select these values and kind of just like rotate it as we want to, and just click and drag, or you can type in a specific value like 0 or 50, etc. Now, there's going to be a bunch of stuff in the details panel that you probably will not need to worry about. We'll cover that in the next lesson. But as I said, you also have something called the content browser down here. And your content is going to be everything that is going to live inside your Unreal Engine project. So to get started, let me just show you one more quick thing before we move on to the more detailed stuff. And that is how to create a material. So if we right click in the empty space over here and we go to material, this menu is basically going to give us all the things that we can add to our content browser. And we'll just click on material, and we'll call this our first material, like so, and then we'll hit Control-Shift-S to save. Let's double click on this material, and you're going to see some scary nodes. Don't worry, we're going to cover this in a later video. It's actually not that scary, but under the first material, we can just select the base color right here, and we can click on the little color chip for the base color. I don't know, make this like a blue color. Click OK, and then now that material is blue. Hit the little save button right here, and because we saved it, we don't need to apply it. The save is basically applying that change. So now this material is this blue color, and we can click and drag this material onto our cube, and now we have a blue cube. So we're going to cover all the extra menus and the details of everything in the next couple of videos, but I wanted to show you like the basic UI of Unreal. So with that said, let's move on to the next lesson.